You may struggle to pay your bills every month. You might not have enough money to buy your dream house. Or maybe you just feel that you don't have enough money. And you're not alone, because 70% of Americans are in the same situation as you. And well, I also was in the same condition, where I didn't have enough money to save or go out with my friends because everything I earned was going towards the rent and the basic needs to survive. But over the time, I managed to learn more and more about personal finance, and I finally managed to have a financial situation that allows to live me as I want. And so I asked myself, if I had to start over, what would I do? How would I get more money than I actually have? Thinking about that, I sat down and worked on it, so that I could show you, which is in my opinion the fastest way to have more money and never struggle with it in the future. But while doing that, I immediately saw that there is a big problem. A problem that will definitely block you from having more money. And without overcoming it, it will become rather impossible to make it. Luckily, it is rather easy to solve. You just have to know how to do it. Because I remember that this was actually one of the things which I struggled. And there was a specific moment when I was 16 that really marked me for that. Because I had just received a couple of $1,000s from my grandparents as a present, and I didn't really know what to do with them, so I asked my father, and he told me just put them in the bank and use them whenever you need them. And clearly I did so, it's my father, I trusted him. But then some months later, I met a guy that was working hard on making more money. And I also got interested in that, and so I started spending a lot of time with him, also learning how to make money. And while doing that, I actually discovered that the advice that my father gave me was terrible. Because just considering inflation, I was losing money all the time. And to that you have to add the fact that I was paying banking fees, so I was losing even more money all the time. And this to say that we all often ask financial advice to our family or maybe friends, and we even search on the internet. And when we search a financial advice, we always find one. But this doesn't mean it is good. Because the problem is that most of the people give financial advice without really knowing what they're talking about. They're just sharing their opinion or their personal experience. But the great thing about money is that it is based on numbers. And numbers are what really count, and not just personal opinions. And so the first thing you have to do if you want to have more money, and you can start doing that now, is to take financial advice only from people that talk about numbers, and not that they just share their opinion. And this might seem super simple, but actually if I hadn't done that, I would still be putting money in my bank every salary I receive, and I wouldn't be making tens of thousands of dollars more every year. And you know what? Just by doing that, by carefully selecting the advice that you receive, and by consequence learning about personal finance, you will make your money grow exponentially. Because basically that is what personal finance is, finding ways to make more money, to have more money. And you firstly do that by getting good advice, learning from it, gaining experience, and learning about numbers that will rule your money. So basically we can resume this very simply. The only way to make your money grow exponentially is to learn about personal finance. And this is what I did. That made me go from struggling to go out with my friends to have $400,000 at 28 while working a 9-to-5 job. And this is why I'm here now, sharing my experience, my knowledge, and clearly my numbers, so that I can help you have enough money to live the life you dream. And so I would resume my journey into 3 phases. And so firstly, I started discovering about personal finance, and the first thing I actually saw is that I was losing a lot of money buying stuff. I was paying too much for everything I was buying. And be careful, it wasn't because I was doing crazy spending. But when I managed to change that, it is the moment when I started to live better. I started to afford some things that I wanted. It is when I started enjoying life. And so this is what I would call the pay less phase. And this is when I learned how that actually works. And I have to be honest, I was shocked in the beginning. Because before that, I knew I was paying interest on my credit card debt, but I didn't know how much it was impacting my finances. Because basically, if I remember well, I was paying 15% more for everything I was buying. And this is crazy. I mean, I'm sure that no one wants to pay more than the actual cost of something. But this is what I was doing all the time because I had a credit card debt. And this is what was actually blocking me from having the life I wanted. But there wasn't actually only that, because also all the late bills had interest on them. And so I was just throwing to the toilet a lot of money. So what happened is that I started being careful about all of this stuff. And in just 1 month, I had already much more money than the month before. And how did I do that? By learning about debt and how to manage it. And so clearly this is the first thing you have to do if you want to have more money. And to start learning the best best place is for sure Investopedia, because they make incredible articles about all subjects of finance, clearly based on numbers and not on personal opinions, and really they're very well made. I also still use it sometimes. The only drawback is that they're more theoretical than practical, and clearly when we're talking about finances you also need the practice, and it is always helpful to have some tips on how to better manage something, in the case debt, and this is why I've made a video for that, so you can just check it out if you're interested in this subject. And honestly, learning about debt is not that difficult, and in one day you could have easily learned everything you need to know to have more money. Okay, so you're starting having more money, but if you're like me, I'm sure you want more, because this is what I went through at this point. I got out of debt, I started living better, but I wasn't actually increasing my wealth. I was actually using the additional money I had to do the things that I couldn't do before, for example going out with my friends, and it was great, but still I couldn't afford to go to holidays as I wanted, because at the end of the month I was finishing my money. I wasn't really keeping my salary with me, and this is why at this point I realized I had to start my accumulation phase. I mean, I had no choice if I wanted to have more money, and it is during this period that I learned about two vital concepts that allowed me to accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the great thing is that they're even easier than that, because firstly I learned about saving, what saving is, what an emergency fund is, and why it is super important to have it, but also how to actually save money and create an emergency fund. And then I learned about how to better manage my expenses, because I mean, if you spend everything you have, you will never be able to save money. And here there actually is an important thing that you must know, because otherwise you will fail big at accumulating money, and there is to fail too, and this is why it is really important to share it. Because the first thing that I found, and that everybody will find searching for expenses, is that you have to budget, which is true, but normally people tell you to budget every penny you will use and to track every single expenses that you will make, which in theory it would be perfect, but you know what the reality is? That it is damn boring and long to do, and this means just one thing, that you will stop doing it. And this is why I started to have a simple budget based on 4 categories, and I only track my expenses in these 4 buckets. Doing so, I made it much simpler, and now it is more than 5 years that I never miss a month, whereas before I was really struggling with it. So looking at savings and expenses, it might seem that there is a lot to do, but to be honest, there is only one thing which is extremely simple, and if you do that, you will surely be successful and have more money. And the thing that you have to do is to just spend less than what you earn. And this single sentence is what will make you more money than you ever thought you could have. Actually, we'll see something later that will make you even more money, but without that, it wouldn't work. And so this really is what helped me, and actually still helps me, to accumulate money. But clearly when you accumulate money, you have to put it somewhere, and you already know the answer. You have to put it under your bed. No, I'm kidding. You have to put it in a bank. But this is why also it is important to understand how the banking system works, and especially how to choose the best bank for your needs. And so yes, now I've been sharing a lot about saving, expenses and banking, but I haven't shared yet the resources that you can use to learn more about that. And well, again, I think that Investopedia, which by the way, it's not sponsoring the video, is the best place to find information about saving, about banking, and even budgeting and expenses. Everything is really well explained. But again, it is rather theoretical. This is why I have another source that talks about all of these subjects and also gives practical tips on how to do it, on how to actually implement all of this, which is, in my opinion, the most difficult part. And well, to access to this content, you just have to subscribe to this channel, because this is what I talk about in every video I make. And so going back to my journey, now I had money in my savings account, and it was great because I could afford many more things I couldn't before. Still, I wanted more money. Also because I knew I could make more money. I knew there was something more, because everything I did until this step, until this phase, was actually to prepare to this final moment. This final phase that would have allowed me to make millions of dollars. Because this is the moment when my building wealth phase started. And here there are actually 2 main things that I learned during this period that you should learn too if you want to make a lot of money. And these 2 things are investing and real estate. Because the first one is actually the way most of the people get rich, and also the best one if you want to become a millionaire on a low salary. And you can do that with 0 effort. Because just to show you the impact, imagine that you start investing $200 per month when you're 18 and you get older, and let's suppose that you retire at 60. Maybe your retirement plan will not be great, but thanks to these investments, you will have more than $1.5 million just by putting $200 per month and letting it sit there for all these years until your retirement. And yes, I know that you might think that investing is complicated and risky, but it actually isn't. Because you're not trying to be a Wall Street trader. You just want to make more money, and to do that, there are just a couple of simple things that you have to know. And clearly, you first have to understand what the stock market is and how it works. But then it is important to know also what are stocks, what are index funds and especially ETFs. And when you know that, which you can clearly find on Investopedia, you just need to know how to actually start investing. And you can do that in just 3 minutes by watching this video. And as a bonus, you could also check out why it is better that you invest your money by yourself instead of having a financial advisor. So let's now talk about real estate. And in particular, I want to talk about the thing that makes the difference between someone that manages to buy his house and keep it and someone that actually loses it. And I'm gonna go straight to the point, because for your whole life you've been told bullshit about buying a house. Because everyone's saying that buying a house is the best investment you could make, that as soon as you have a fixed job you have to buy a house, and that you could never be wrong at buying a house, they're just ruining your finances. Because this is not true. Yes, it can be good, it can be even great to buy a house, but not always. And this is extremely important, and it is extremely important to know how to differentiate your particular situation, so if you should buy a house or not. Because this actually is one of the main reasons why people struggle with debt, and this often leads to people just losing their house to the bank because they can't afford their mortgage. So it is vital that if you want to have more money, you have to understand by yourself the critical concepts about housing, which basically are how mortgage rate works, so the difference also between variable and fixed, why renting can be better than buying, even if everybody says the opposite, as well as which are the actual costs that you will face as a homeowner, because those are very often underestimated. And you can find most of that on Investopedia, but I've also made a playlist that talks about that, and you can find it here. So I showed you my journey to transmit you my experience to make you understand what you actually need to make more money. But this is just the theoretical part, and you can learn as much as you want about it, but if you don't put it in practice, the money will not come. And so if you really want to make more money, you absolutely have to watch this video. Thank you for watching and see you soon.